G'day listeners and welcome back to another episode of the Keeper League podcast. We're the AFL fantasy podcast that doesn't talk about the superstars. We only talk about the less knowns and the players who will bring value to your draft and Keeper League teams. My name's Heff and this week I am joined by the godfather of AFL fantasy. Welcome to the show for the first time in 2025, Adam Warnie child. How are you, mate?
Good. Feel like a grandfather at the moment. The game's going past me, but anyway, it's all good.
Well, they say father time does catch up with everyone. Maybe it's the same for fantasy as well. But what's been going on, mate? What's your troubles? What's your woes? What's going on?
I'm just actually, to be honest, I've just built really bad teams this year across the board in everything, and probably getting a bit of bad luck too. I think that's the thing, especially in draft, is where that's going. Like our keeper league this year, I'm 3-3, but I've got a cooked forward line. Like I reckon a lot of coaches probably do. Like some of those players there. I've got Hogan who keeps on missing games. Rochelle's out at the moment. Like these guys that should just, hopefully be there and give you something. And so, I'm fielding the likes of, Ginnivan is getting games, but obviously he didn't play for me on the weekend. And just a heap of average sort of players there. Nothing that really jumps out, but in saying that, I do have some nice midfielders that are ticking along, which is keeping me up. That's probably what's got me my 3 wins, like a George Hewitt. He was a redraft in our keeper, that was a pretty handy one to be able to do that with. Anyway, it is what it is. Like it's one of those things that I think things will even out a little bit as the season goes on, but I'd like all my forwards to be on the park, which would be great. Like I can't even get Harmsy playing, even Degoe, I'd love him to, get that forward status at some point because of what he does, but he's not playing enough games or anything like that. So anyway, it's all good.
Yeah, mine's been pretty similar. Like, more so I've got actually a pretty decent lineup. It's just like I've got Jack Steele who will get injured for 2 weeks and then put up, 80 and a 60 or Tristan Cherry who's supposed to be your weekly captain option, at the start of the year and then just putting out rubbish until about this week. So that's the sort of stuff. Still sitting second on the ladder in our league. Right. I think I've lost the 2 games and beaten the team that's top of the ladder as well. So going all right.
You're looking at redraft stuff. Like there's a lot of teams that maybe their first 3 picks could have all been busts so far this year. That's what it would feel like. And so anyway, it is still only 6 weeks in, so things will hopefully revert to the mean.
That's the thing, we've got a few questions later on about buy lows and stuff like that, but some of the stars of the game are not putting up the scores we want to at the moment, but history tends to show us that they, can turn it around pretty quickly, so we won't get too hung up on that. While you're here, I just want to say thanks for jumping on the Footy Heads bandwagon last week and making a bit of content and stuff around that. That was great to see. What do you think of the game so far?
Yeah, it's good. It's great fun. I think that's the thing. It's one of those addictive things, and you want to test yourself a little bit with it. Once it came out, they had a little bit of a real quick go, and they thought, I better chuck something together. Being school holidays, where you've got some time to do stuff. So, it's just great fun. I think anyone that I'd love BT to have a go at it to see how he. That would be your ultimate, I reckon, to see if the man that gets a lot of things wrong with player identification to see how he goes on even the easy level.
I do like getting the commentators on. I had our mate Aaron Bryans from ABC do the footy numbers one last time. I reckon I'll get him on in a few weeks and see how he fares.
He'd have to be good at it, I think. That's the thing. Like some of these guys, and he's across so much. Like, when you're flying interstate to do games as well, you do need to be.
Yeah. And just knowing how much research he puts in as well. And I know there's times where he's not done games because he was worried he didn't get the time to not put enough research in and stuff like that. So you just know how hard he works to actually get to that point. So I'm going to see, I might get him on in a few weeks and do a bit of content with him. But no, thank you heaps for doing some content. Didn't even ask for it. So you're just a legend of a bloke and just put it out and helps us out. So that's great to see. Anyway, should we get stuck into the round review?
Yes.
All right, we'll start with the Brisbane Lions versus Collingwood game on the Thursday night. What'd you make of this? The Magpies, the Lions, what did the result go the way you expected?
Well, the result didn't go the way I went, and obviously, I think a lot of us are hot on Lions, and probably with the classic hat on with that, a few of those guys struggled for us, but it's probably one that you don't want to read too much into with the score or make any rash decisions off the back of that, whether that is for classic or draft, because they do have a nice matchup this week, as we might even get to a little bit later with when we talk about teams against the Saints. But it was it probably didn't go as I expected, but the scores really weren't there for them. I guess the names, and you've got them in the doc here. Ned Long's been someone that everyone's sort of been talking about. Classic has been picked there, but obviously in draft, we've now seen that he's out of the vest, and we saw the comments last week from McRae to say that, he won't be in a vest from now on. Scored 81, so too good for the pod.
Yeah, he's getting close. He's on what we call the bubble, I guess, like the old school days where the prices used to change. But yeah, on the bubble for too good for the podcast. He's just getting the role that's, going to be very hard for him to not put up an 80 each week, given the injuries in that midfield or the role changes that have been around, plus a bit of a change in the guard between old and new and stuff like that. So yeah, he's probably not mentionable anymore.
He's making it hard too, like for guys like Perryman, for example. That's the literal role there, I guess, that Perryman that we were hoping that he might have had.
That said, Houston will come back into the side this weekend, so hopefully frees Perryman up a little bit, and then we might have a bit of a watch on someone like Long and see what his role is on the back of that. But at the moment, he's looking pretty good. What do you think of the debutant? Sam Marshall came on in the last quarter, small sample size, but what were your thoughts on?
Yeah, super keen to see him. Like, obviously, his numbers were great. He was next gen, wasn't he, or whatever the academy is called?
Lions Academy, yeah.
Yeah, Lions Academy. So, yeah, sort of, I guess they've been wanting and nursing him through, I guess. So it was good to see him debut there. Looks good. I think that's scored well enough for his time on ground sort of thing and that. But, yeah, it's going to be one of those slow burns or slow builds until he becomes a full member of the squad. I think you've got Lohman a week away. That was the other player that came in, Tunstall, who's played a handful of games. So they're the sorts of guys that are going to be that fringe guy for a while, especially when you've a premiership team. Yeah,
Tunstall's the other one, because he is putting up some huge numbers in the VFL. Looks like he's ready to crack in, and same with Marshall. He was just one that I was super hot on in the draft. And if they're kind of at any other club, you're way more hotter on them. But then you look at that Brisbane midfield, and there's how do you even fit any of these guys in when they're fully fit? As well as all the other kind of players that are coming back from injury and stuff, it just doesn't match up. You can't kind of rely on any of these guys. But they're guys that you want to stash away for the future. Players like Marshall and maybe even Tunstall as well, who scored 59. Both kind of play on the half-back line as well, which is their midfielders too. So it's interesting that's the role they give them first up too.
A lot of kids get that, don't they? I think that it must just ease them in so well to be able to see the ball and see the play a little bit with it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, on to the, what do they call it? The Good Friday Super Clash. This week. I'm not sure how much of a super clash it was, given the score
North
line.
tried for a little bit to start with, but yeah, it did turn into
I actually tipped North in this game.
Did you really? Wow.
Trying to be a bit clever. Well, I have a bit of a soft spot. I've got some mates that are involved in North. Their family members are assistant coach there, and then I kind of talk to them a lot about North. So, bit of a soft spot. Kind of, I don't really give a shit about tipping because I'm more of a fantasy guy. So,
you get sold a lot of hope then.
Yeah, correct. And the coach that I kind of know is way more optimistic than the brothers are. The brothers are very much more realists. Got this kind of running joke that if a player's no good, he'll describe him. He's a lovely guy, but is the first thing they go with. So now we've got this kind of running things like Luke McDonald, good bloke, just as a bit of a code. Paul Curtis, shit bloke, because he's actually quite good, That's kind of the way we kind of describe the North players these days. But Paul Curtis is the first guy, shit bloke, good footballer though. 80 points. Do you think he's a viable option in your keeper leagues? He has to be now, doesn't he, with the way he's scoring?
Yeah, he's been scoring really well, hasn't he, across this season? And you sort of think, when's it going to drop off as such? But he just keeps getting it done, and probably in some different ways too. I think that's the thing. But with the forwards, as we know, he's definitely a fieldable dude and someone that you'd want on your list in a keeper league. Yeah,
100%. I think he's even undrafted in. He was actually undrafted in one of my leagues, so we've just had our ad drops first for the season. We do 3 per year type thing, and he went with pick 2 with that. So just some guy who was completely overlooked, given his role is never really conducive to fantasy scoring. But that's the thing with some of these small forwards. If you're bobbing up, you're taking marks, you're working up the ground, you're kicking goals. You're going to put up 80s every 2 or 3 weeks and be a completely viable option, I think.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the things with some of these small forwards. We actually do push up the ground a little bit. We're seeing more of them actually go up and take some marks along the way.
Yeah, definitely. Especially in some of these kind of lesser teams as well. They have to kind of push up and find their own footy as well. Next guy on the list for North is Dill Stevens. like he's always a player that people can draft him really late, and hopefully, like I think he was an underage decent scorer. I think was the main thing, and kind of had some good games when he was given full game time at Sydney and stuff like that. But it's been subbed so much. Scored 75 points on the weekend. He's just not one that I can really trust. Don't you think?
Yeah, and trust that's the end of the day. I think we all probably had some hope when he did move to North Melbourne, but it's just the trust factor for me is probably the issue there.
Yeah, and the other, like Bailey Scott's on the outer as well. Yeah. He plays pretty much an identical role. I think had a good game in the VFL on the weekend, so we might just see a change there again.
They're going to make changes across the season anyway, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. On the blue side of things, a few more to talk about. Jesse Motlop had 95 points, kicked the 3 goals, which is obviously going to bump his score. He's getting some CBA action. Have you noticed that?
Yeah, it's incredible, and I guess that's the thing. And so you put in your head a little bit, is it because they're playing against North Melbourne, they're trying some things, but the Blues need to be trying some things anyway. So that was a bit of a surprise there. But to bob up and kick goals and get a 90 plus, it's a big effort. Like,
you watch that game on the weekend, you see that score, you see the CBAs, and you're like, oh, great, like, let's give him a go. But he has actually had a few this season. They've been trying a few things at the centre bounces, trying to do a few clearance bits and pieces. So I reckon it's probably a tip of the cap for now, but just one to probably keep your eye on and see if he can replicate it. Charlie Curnow's scored the 90 points. He's usually like a 75-plus average forward, but he started so shit this season. It's probably due to injury, but he's had back-to-back easy opponents. Do you think he's heating up now after a slow start, or do you think it's just an opponent factor?
Opponent factor has to be in there because, it's been West Coast, then North Melbourne, where we'd be licking our lips knowing that that's happening. But in saying that, he has been that sort of 75 guy that you probably want to bank in and think that is. I think for me, and this is probably the Carlton forward line in a way, is Harry and Charlie, like together. I think one's up, one's down almost is what it feels like. And then obviously Harry was out this week. So, it's a tough one to buy into. I wouldn't be sort of selling the farm to try to make that happen or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I'm the same. But I've got him in Shiva. I think he's my F5 at the moment, and I'm more than comfortable with him there. I'd be probably a bit more worried if he was any higher up the list than that, though. The other guy, I thought might go forward this week with Kemp injured was Jack Silvani, but he kind of seems to be playing a defence still, so I think he's a lot better in that role, just taking intercept marks. It suits him a bit more. Don't think it's going to be someone you can kind of, put the captaincy on each week or anything like that, but just a reliable option to kind of have as a D5. I think you can kind of roll with that.
Just the floor's nice and high, I guess, is what you're thinking in that role too.
Yeah, correct. Because he's also not taking the number one forward as well. Like, he can kind of float off a bit too. And then Corey Durden got the 84 points from his first game of the season. I looked at some of the waiver numbers this week. Very highly requested this week, but I think people just need to cool their jets a little bit on that one. They see the score, and that's another one. He went pick 3 in our mid-season top-ups, and I was shaking my head a little bit at that one. But I think they just see the score and pick them up. So whatever, each their own. West Coast versus Essendon game. Was the heart in the mouth a bit in this game, Warnie?
Well, it felt like a loss because of how close it was, but also because Draper went down. That was a pretty sad thing. But anyway, they got the job done. And I don't know. We're just going to have. There's no false hope this year for any Bombers supporters, but we just roll through it and see what happens.
I feel like a lot of the prominent Bomber fans out there kind of in the content creation space in the AFL world were kind of like predicting this anyway, like we're likely to go over there and play shit, because it has happened a few times, hasn't it not?
Definitely, yeah. Exactly. And you see that, even some of the big dogs just didn't, classic hat on again, and Zach Merritt, you think that was going to be a great game for him, and I'm sure, he was my captain in Keeper League, like that was as simple as it was. I didn't even think twice about that sort of thing, and then, pumps out an 80.
Yeah, 100%. So, it is what it is. You kind of expect it. You got away with a win. You can be happy. Just on that, you mentioned the Sam Draper injury. Do you think Todd Goldstein is the guy to pick up off the waivers this week and he rolls his number one ruck, or?
Yeah, he has to. I don't think there's really any other option. That's probably the thing. You're not fielding him with any massive positivity or hope there, but I think that he's definitely worth being being your emergency or whatever. If you can grab him, I think it's going to be all right because, again, we know guys in the number one ruck role have a pretty high floor as well. So he should be a 70+ guy. And that's sort of where I see that, whether that's an emergency. And if you did do the Draper Brian handcuff because you punted your rucks or whatever like that in your single season draft, your redraft, that's where you might need to. Well, you'd have to go. That's the thing.
Yeah,
you probably might have done it last week anyway, just in that weird sense of what you needed to do.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the other one was Peter Wright, who did sort of more to the backup role. Like, again, there's been so many waiver claims for him. I think he was one of the most requested of the week. But, like, he had the 119 points on the back of 6 goals. Like, you're playing West Coast. Like, do that. But do you reckon there's any chance that, they just roll with him as the number one ruck? Or do you think Goldstein's definitely coming in?
Yeah, I think it has to be Goldie. Like, Goldie was pulled out of the VFL game, from what I understand, on the weekend as well, just knowing that he's got a job ahead of him coming up. So, I think that's where they'll go. But, I don't mind him as an option. Like, you go 119, 6 goals and all of that. But he's going to have to chop out. Like, Goldie's not going to be able to shoulder a number one ruck role. And the Bombers went into this season playing 2 rucks, and so that must be part of their structure and their idea. Yeah. We saw that Reid would have had a couple in there, I reckon, as well, in that last quarter was thrown, but I reckon that was out of a little bit of necessity, I suppose. Yeah.
Now, I don't mind the option. Like, I think he's going to have to be the backup guy at the very least. So, if you're just desperate for a forward, a warm body on the field each week, don't expect 119 each week, but he will be the kind of key spearhead up there. The other one, I guess, is probably way too raw, but there's a Cale Guerin. He's a kind of key forward ruckman as well, but I don't think he's probably a few years away from being an option.
We need a mid-season draft. That's what we need. And and who knows when it comes to the we do have the mid-season draft. We need the mid-season trade period, but when it comes to the mid-season draft, I reckon like Crosley would have to be working out some accommodation in Essendon to Tullamarine, getting ready for being picked up there, I reckon.
Yeah, it'd be a nice little addition to might solve a lot of problems for a lot of clubs there anyway. Will Setterfield's next player for Essendon I want to talk about, 107 points. Does he hold his spot, do you think, when Caldwell comes back? I know Sardis is out of the side at the moment, but I think he had a big game in the twos on the weekend. What are your thoughts regarding Setterfield?
His body is such a good thing for the team, and like he plays that defensive role, which is a nice thing. Tackles are always going to be nice and high for him, so that's something that we love about Setterfield and where he is. And we know that he can score, I guess, regardless of what he's doing. So it is about that job security, and I don't think Caldwell, it's not like a like for like, but it's a body, and that's what it comes down to. I guess that's what that's going to be. And don't forget, we've also got Parrish on the sidelines as well, and he may never come back, but he'll be there at some point. So there is that worry, but I'm not sure if he'd be available, because the other thing is, like, he probably had quite a high ADP because of that average that sat next to his name from last year from his couple of games. So, if he's there, like, you just ride him for as long as you can, I think. Keeper wise, you're probably not going too hard to try to get him. Obviously, he's getting older, and he wasn't in the plans from the get go.
Do you think he's almost like a sell high candidate? Like, I've seen like in our league, he got traded pretty high this week to a coach. So do you think that's a good option?
Yeah, I think that would be a great call to be making on that, because he's going to be great and serviceable. He could play out the rest of the season and, pump out 100 average from here on. But, if you can get if you can get a good pick for him now, you're going to be laughing.
Yeah, I think that's what happened in our league. He got traded for a round 2 pick next year in a dynasty league, so pretty handy. Our man Sardell Hawley, I was convinced he was starting this week and getting a crack. What do you have, 70 from 60% time on ground last week, and starts as a sub and gets us a -1. If he would have, I had him on the bench as an emergency. If he would have come on, he would have cost me points. So, yeah. Do you think he ever gets a crack, or is that going to be pretty hard now, do you think?
He does, but he's just looked way too much like that perfect sub. I think the comment that was made, it's not so much of a perfect sub if you score -1 in a game, but that's what it feels like for him. He has to get an opportunity, because that's the other thing that we're seeing with some of these those perennial subs that they either get dumped to the twos, like an Angus Hasty on the weekend, he had to go and play there, or they give him those full games. So, and I think he'll be ready for that. Like, it's not like he's a young dude. Like, he's got an older, mature body. Hopefully he does get a run. But it is that, what's his role exactly? Like, it feels like that sort of wing role at the moment. It's not going to be... The Bombers' backline sort of stacked a fair bit. We saw that Martin even went back there and played a little bit more clock than what he had. So, yeah, it's going to be tough for him to do that. It's just the issue that he is that perfect sub at the moment.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know. I just want to see him play a full game and see what he can actually do because, it looks like he's got a few tools there, especially if you look at the VFL scoring history in the past. On to the Eagles side of things, Matt Flynn, 97 points. Back in the side after a monster couple of weeks in the waffle. Do you reckon he can sustain that type of scoring? Or do you think, just more importantly, he's probably the number one ruck going forward?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think right from the get-go this year, like, we just didn't know or can't really, and I don't know if I can really even now guarantee the fact that this is the way that the Eagles are going to go. Sustaining a 97? No. But in saying that, he was up against Draper for most of the game. Like, it was the last quarter, I guess, where Draper was out. But, I think that it's a solid option is probably where it is. But, geez, it's going to be so easy for him to lose that spot again to Williams because they've shown it already once this year.
Yeah, that's the
even
thing.
From the start of the season.
Yeah, and one goes back to the waffle and absolutely dominates. And then it makes it hard for them not to pick him. Then now watch Bailey Williams over the next few weeks probably will put up huge scores in the waffle, and Matt Flynn might have one or two bad games here and there, and they just did the switcheroo again. So it seems to be a bit of a roller coaster there. You'd want to have both handcuffed if that's who you're rolling with. Just looking at a few other things, Jack Williams scored 89 points, stood up with Oscar Allen managed. Maybe one to look at in the future when West Coast aren't terrible, but not really one I'm probably going to be relying on now. Elijah Hewitt, though, 77 points. He was just so lively in that midfield, spent a bit of time forward. A lot of hype around him in the last probably 2 or 3 years. Injured a lot last year, but you reckon he'll be a gun in a few years, don't you?
Yeah, he's probably one of those ones that a lot of people have probably stashed and gone, I'm waiting for that to happen, especially while he's got that mid-forward status too. So, if he is available, again, you can be stashing him. It all comes down and depends on how deep your league is and whether you can afford to. But, yeah, if he can start pumping out these 70-plus scores, obviously that's fieldable for a forward. And with that midfield clock, it was really, really nice. I think that was the exciting thing about him is that they did give him a crack.
Yeah, he was one of the most requested on the waiver wire this week as well, so with good reason there. On to the Melbourne versus Fremantle game, a bit of an upset for the Freo supporters. Melbourne supporters very, very happy. So probably thinking they weren't going to get a win for a while and finally got one. Trent Rivers is the first player I want to talk about. 122 points. Last week I said he needed CBAs to score, and he got 8 last week and put up an 80. Played defence all day this week and was there, put up his biggest score for the year, so I clearly don't know what I'm talking about. Do you think Melbourne are just on top in this game and that's why he scored well? Or do you think, he's turned a bit of a corner and found a bit of a role? What do you think?
Yeah, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt when they are up and about because they haven't been this year, and that might be one of those factors. But Rivers has been all right. I think he had a 90. He was good last week. There was that, I think it was a 30-odd against Geelong, so that was a pretty average score in there. But the scores haven't been too bad over the last month, regardless of role, and that's the thing. It took 10 marks, I think it was, on the weekend as well. So that was where that became probably a thing. But and you want to be thinking longer term the next couple of weeks, but he's got a couple more weeks to work at it and do pretty well because they've got, what have they got? West Coast and, is it West Coast and Richmond over the next couple? I think it's something like that.
Something like that, mate. I haven't looked, yeah.
No, it's a couple of nice ones.
They got Richmond this week on the Thursday, I reckon. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Yep.
Yes, yep.
And then,
yep. Yeah, it should be a pretty decent turn for him. So there's a few Melbourne players there actually going all right. The only other thing I'll flag is Judd McVie comes back into the side. And it's not like he's ever been a huge scorer or a huge possession getter. It's just that he was a player that they chucked in the midfield at the end of last season when everyone was injured. But they might be grooming him for a bit of more of a distributor role off the halfback if he's the kind of guy that they're using in the middle, because he's got a reasonable disposal and stuff like that, but he can play that defensive role too. So just a bit of a watch on roles this week. I think worst case, you probably see Rivers in the midfield more as a result, which isn't a bad thing as well. So, yeah. Cozzy Pickett's now too good for the podcast. 118 points, kicked 5 goals, but like, so you look at this and go, oh, he's obviously playing forward, but like 3 of them were in a quarter where he was clearly like resting up there. I watched him last week at Gather Round, and like he's just up the ground so much more this year. It feels like it felt like last couple of years, like you see him with the CBA numbers, but he'd be back in the forward line pretty quickly after that. Just feels like he's spending a little bit more time further up the ground. His heat map probably indicates that as well. So I
think they just like him. They like him at the contest. That's the thing. And so he's a player that can extract the ball and can do pretty amazing things too. It's a bit like those goals as well. Like every time the ball was near him when he was resting forward or up in the forward line, it was pretty exciting.
Yeah, definitely. And contract year and all that. Like he's going to be putting in his best effort. Just
doing
good work
that
to
against,
anyone.
Doing that against a future club as well.
Yeah, exactly. So good work to anyone who drafted him this year. Went late kind of in a few drafts, I think. So, and because he missed so much at the start of the season as well. So pretty handy for those who waited. Tom McDonald had 11 marks defence, just a tip of the cap there with his 82 points. On to some Freo players. Murphy Reid had 74 points, but lots of touches up forward, but he's just one that you kind of have to wait until he gets a midfield role, which could be a long time away, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. You're just sort of waiting. They're a pretty stacked midfield, as we know, and there's probably guys ahead of him in the sense of just longer time on the list. But yeah, he's playing this role really well at the moment. I think that's probably what's going to obviously keep him in the side, but that's going to be his short to medium term future at the minute.
Yeah, definitely. Carl Warner's a player that's caught my eye over the past couple of weeks. I think he had an 80-plus score last week, 70 points this week. Seems to be playing Wagner's role because I think Wagner played 2 games in a row, scored reasonably well. I think it was like 70s and 80s. Then I think he did a calf, and then I assumed that's why Warner's kind of playing back here in this role. But then I'm pretty sure I saw Wagner playing in the Waffle on the weekend as well. So might have just, maybe Warner went too well last week and they didn't want to bring him back. But Chapman out too probably helps him. And I did do some, I actually had Chapman in my streamers of the week because Melbourne were giving up the most points or one of the most points to medium defenders in the season so far. So it might be short-lived, but he's just a guy I've got on my watch list. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Yeah, I like him. You can notice him out there as well, which is always good in a fantasy play. But yeah, he's been used as well. I think that's the other side of it, that he was as part of that link.
Yeah, he might just be like a stash option for the future or something because I don't think Wagner's going to be around for that long. And, they do have a few of those kind of medium halfback types. Luke Ryan scores a lot back there. Clark scores a lot. Chapman's the guy you probably want to go to next level. He just doesn't get a consistent run at things. But who knows, he might overtake him if he keeps this run of form up. Onto the Crows versus GWS Giants. Was this the worst game of football you've ever seen, do you reckon?
Yeah, it was. I had an afternoon to myself, actually, and was keen to sit down and watch that. And it was... yeah, I wish I had something else to do at the time because it was, it was just average. Like, what was your weather like over there? Was it just windy and just rough day sort of thing?
Yeah, like it felt like winter just hit. Like it was still 30 plus last week for a lot of last week, and then winter just hit, and it's here to stay now by the looks of it. So, just a windy day. So not a lot to talk about here. I think Connor Iden was probably the only kind of standout for me in this whole game out of players you expected to score well versus kind of guys that haven't been are more the keeper league types. But 97 points in this game. I think, like preseason, he was a player I thought would benefit the most from Perryman leaving out of that back line. And he's actually averaging 77 right now. So he has put up like a 7-point scoring bump so far this season. This game, it felt like the ball just held up in the wind a lot and he was able to take a few intercept marks and just a lot of, GWS couldn't get their game going.
Heap of marks for their defenders, weren't there? That was a big thing for the Giants.
And they couldn't get their game going, so they were chipping around a lot in defence and stuff like that. But I reckon he could go. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, got flat waters for the Giants. But I think maybe he could be a player that just kind of, I don't think he's going to be an 80 average, but kind of that mid to high 70s. I think he could do that pretty easy. He's my D5 at the moment, so pretty happy with him there. Onto the Richmond versus Gold Coast game. Again, another shocking game, really. Good for the Tigers to get up, but... Will Power's the only one that stood out to me that might be on waiver wires or low in value for some teams, given that they've recruited a heap of other defenders at the Gold Coast this year. But seemed to get more time in defence this week after starting on the wing. Scored the 97 points. Rioli hasn't been that effective on the halfback line. I feel like they're kind of just not using him as much, so maybe Power gets a bump there. I don't know. What do you think the best case scenario is for him and what the usage of him with the Gold Coast Suns?
Yeah, I think the thing is, Rioli's probably been the biggest surprise there of his scoring output and just how he's being used as well. So, yeah, I think Powell's going to be one that's going to be a bit up and down and role dependent sort of thing on what he does. But he's always been someone that I feel like he's someone that I always draft as well. He always sits there and just doesn't deliver. So, it's one of those players.
You can look for roles as much as you want, but sometimes a player just doesn't have it. You know what I mean? Like they're just not a accumulator or whatever. And I think Will Powell might be leaning towards one of those guys, despite what we've kind of seen glimpses of in the past. Onto the Swans versus Port Adelaide game. I think I tipped Port in this game purely because I think we've beaten them a stack of times. I think the only really bad game we've had against Sydney in the last 5 years was the prelim last year. So good win by Port to actually get up. I was pretty happy with it.
Keep Ken.
Absolutely not. No. I'm putting this down to Josh Carr's game plan at the moment, which is finally starting to click. Ken's just the chief motivator on the bench. But anyway, Hayden McLean, just I guess probably a tip of the cap performance to him. 9 marks, 2 goals. Port's defence is somewhat undermanned. We've always had weak key defenders, and without Zerk Thatcher in the side, a few are getting off the chain this week. It's probably Nick Larkey's probably a guy you'd want to have on field, I think, this week against them as well. But maybe just look at this for some streaming options. Yeah. He's an option there. Chad Warner, how worried are you as an owner with the 70 points? Is he a buy low target still for you? If you're a contending team and you've got him, what are you doing at the moment?
Yeah, I'd be buying low. You just have to back it, and I don't know whether that's a stubborn man that I am, but the role's weird as well, isn't it? It's just, no wonder he got forward status. There's no doubt about why he did. So, it's an odd one, and I don't know, is there something going on in his head with the whole contract and move and all that sort of stuff or all of that? But, it's a little bit, it's a worry. I'm a stubborn man, so I would be holding. But, it'd be nice to try to squeeze him from someone as a buy low, because with the forward status is one thing, but also just the fact that we know that he can be that 95 to 100 guy.
Yeah, and with the move on the cards, forward status, if he does go to a West Coast or whatever next season, he's their number one midfielder, going to have forward status, could be the number one player in the comp. So
there's not a lot of downside to getting him, whether you own him or whether you're trying to squeeze him out of someone.
It's more like you're contending for a flag, he's costing you. Someone comes with a Jack McRae type offer. And so you're going to have a 90 to 100 averaging forward who's not going to be around next year but helps you this season. I'd find it still hard to entertain it, just knowing his age profile and what the potential he's got. But
if you're contending now, you're hopefully contending next year as well.
Correct.
That's the way I'd be looking at it, I think.
Yeah. Onto some of the Port side of things. Kane Farrell had 106 points. There's a rotating cast of players that are getting the bump off the half-back line with Houston. Doesn't seem to be a single player. Bergman was going all right. He did cop a knee knock last week, and I think that's still affecting him a little bit. That
affected him, yeah.
Yeah, but then Farrell pops up this week. We even saw Logan Evans go big one week. There's just, I don't know, it's too hard to predict with Port. I think it's more of just a spread than a number one kind of player benefiting from Houston's leaving. So it was Farrell's turn this week, and that's all I can really put it down to. A guy I've been kind of campaigning for on the waiver wire last few weeks, and he's still there in a few leagues this week, Sam Powell-Pepper, 74 points. I don't know, if you had him as an F5 option, would you be happy with that?
I think so, yeah. He's sort of getting it done, isn't he? And he's busy. As a Port supporter, you'd be pretty happy to have him in your team, wouldn't you? He fires up, he does what he needs to do. Yeah,
it's such a good pressure option inside forward 50. He tackles, kind of keeps the ball in your possession. But it's the last few years, it's just his finishing. He's been able to actually snag a few goals per game, gets on the snap or whatever and, puts 1-3, which is probably what he didn't have in the past. And I think he's because he's had a whole year out of the game with the ACL injury, he's really only just starting to heat up, I think, as well. He's someone I can see as a 70-plus, average guy for the remainder of the season. And, if you're playing that at F5, you're taking that every day of the week, I reckon. So if he's on your waiver wires, he's one I'd be snapping up. Onto the Dogs versus St Kilda game. Your boy, Riley Sanders, he's a Tassie boy, isn't he?
He is, Lonnie lad.
Yeah. You work with his old man or something, don't you?
I do work with his dad, and so it's a great conversation to have with him a lot. It's a good thing, but yeah, it's cool to actually sort of live that little pseudo life through that too, which is cool. But just here at Utah Stadium, this was his home ground here in his little old suburb. So a great kid, and as you can see, like he can play, and we know that. I think from the get go, his junior numbers were epic. He's one of the most professional kids that you'll ever see. Like they'd finish their dinner, everyone else was finishing off, and he'd be down the floor on rolling out on the mat on the floor or whatever, those sorts of things he'd be doing. That's what he's about.
Well, there was a bit of public discourse last year that he kind of wasn't overall happy with, like not getting some, senior game time and stuff like that, which was quite, publicly put out there, playing a lot of VFL. Is that headspace better, you think, like getting the run in the ones, actually putting up some good scoring, getting the role that he needs? Like, can we trust him for the rest of the season, do you reckon?
That would have been a lot through frustration of how professional he is, I guess, that he's doing what he can and all that sort of stuff. And probably then as well, not so much that he was a big fish down here, because he actually moved away and played for Sandringham, went and did his year 11 and 12 over in Melbourne, so he wasn't even in Tassie for those couple of years. But yeah, that's more about him. But I guess role's a big thing. So he didn't have a centre bounce on the weekend, so he's playing this sort of half-forward role, but very much in the corridor, and this is where I think it's going to be a slight issue, that not every week's going to go his way. This week they used him a lot, and the St Kilda matchup is a big thing in it. Obviously 130 is huge, like he's had 30 touches and kicked a goal in that as well, but was able to take marks because they were using him through there. So that's going to be a big part of what he's about, I think, that you're going to take some highs and lows, but I think his floor is rising a lot now, and even without those CBAs, if he can get that confidence up, which I think he has done throughout this season, because last year, no wonder he threw his drink bottle. He thought he was going all right in a game and get subbed off and those sorts of things. Yeah. But those things are hopefully behind him as a second-year player, and maybe that tough love is going to make him a little bit of a better player and wanting to be used.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, well, this kind of leads on to the next guy I want to talk about as well. Like, Joel Frazier I think he saw kind of the uptick in those CBAs. Obviously, Bont come into the side as well, like, which doesn't help his cause in there. But like Joel Frazier as well, with the 97 points. Like, I wanted him back in defence, but because there was like a bit of a tweet this week, from one of the Bulldogs insiders. Some guy goes to, I can't remember the count, but he goes to all the trainings and watches stuff, and basically said like there's going to be some role changes this week with Bont coming back and shuffling the magnets. And I immediately I just went, Joel Frazier surely back on that halfback kind of cruisy role. But then you look at the halfback, you've got Bramble, Johannisson's back now, you've got Bailey Dale, then you've got Buku. Like you've got three talls, three running defenders. Like it seems like there's just no spot for him in there. So I was a bit worried. I saw him named on the wing this week as well. But then, saw a bump in the CBAs this week. And I think Bont back maybe just helps a guy like Joel Frazier a little bit as well, like just takes a bit of the heat off him. He can kind of play as that third stringer a bit more. So it was just encouraging to see someone like that a lot of us kind of invested. I think I took him with our second round pick in the top up draft this year. Just kind of good to see that. The other thing is St Kilda, I guess, is a pretty cruisy matchup as well. But I don't know. What do you think of Joel Frazier and Riley Sanders and I guess the whole CBA mix and stuff like that? Are we going to start seeing some consistency? We've got Treloar to come back. What's your thoughts overall? That's
what was coming into my head as well. We've got Treloar to come into the mix there. I guess even Sam Darcy being out now, that's going to be mix things up as well. Like, does Bont become more that forward mid? Does he need to be? So there's what they've probably realised is that they did have a bit of a tight rotation previously, that they have opened it up. I think the Dogs now, or they've got the opportunity to open it up a little bit as well. So that's, it's going to be a work in progress the whole time. Even like when you're talking about those half backs, maybe that changes a little bit. Do we see that Lobb has to play forward like they tried him out there after Darcy went down a little bit, and bring in a Bustlinger, for example, to play in defence? We sort of spoke about that last night on our podcast, but they're the sorts of things that we're going to see some change. And then before we make all these big calls, the Saints gave up a buttload of points, and there was so much going on there, whether that was marking, whether that was just controlling the ball and having possession. That's something that you do have to take a little bit out of this with a grain of salt, with how well some of the players went, and then in saying that, what the roles actually really looked like. So that's probably one of the takeaways I had watching that game.
Yeah, you mentioned Darcy as well. So Aaron Norton's was another one, or a big waiver wire target this week for people as well. Scored the 93 points, and you kind of really saw the uptick once the injury kind of happened as well. So he's someone you should probably be targeting in your forward lines on the waiver wire as well. You also mentioned just the scoring overall, like Jason Johannesson, 101 points. Like this guy can score. The role is so awesome for fantasy scoring with him. He was pretty poor last week, but it's like first game coming back. I picked him up off the waivers a couple weeks ago in the Shiva League, and pretty happy with that now because I can kind of just roll him as my D5, and it's going to be a pretty reasonable score most weeks. I think he averaged 80 last year from the games he played before he got injured. So, but I think like if you're a contending team, he's someone you could probably get cheap as well if he belongs to a bottom rebuilding team as well. So, one to think about, and just want to toot my own horn here with my streamers article last week with Lockie Bramble telling people to bring him on the field. In fact, like I had Heath Chapman in there, he didn't play, so I can't count that one obviously. But Bramble, Brad Hill, Charlie Curnow, I think there's one more, I can't remember which one it was, but all went 80 plus last week. Oh, sorry, at least 75 plus I think it was. I think Sam Powell-Pepper was the other one. So yeah, just tooting my own horn there. Just check out the streamer article each week. And the other one was Sam Davidson. Again, scored well. On that wing, it's never going to be that fruitful, but playing against St Kilda, you might want to start playing those outside types.
7 marks, that helps, and that's what's going to boost any score, aren't they?
Correct. On to the last game of the round, Geelong versus Hawthorn. Geelong were really low scoring again, and this is what scares me about having Geelong players, but I don't think any one player scored over a ton in this game. Sean Manor, though, was probably the top scorer, 90 points, 3 goals. What I like about him, he rolls up to stoppages. Like he looks like a midfielder sometimes around those stoppages in the forward half of the ground. So he's one a lot of people kind of went early on in drafts. Keeper leagues, he's 27, so he's probably not the most, spring chicken out there, but pretty handy option to have if you're contending, wouldn't you think?
Just a nice plug and play, isn't it? And I think that's what Geelong have done. Geelong have played the keeper game in this and going, yep, let's grab this mature body that, can go and do that. And he looks strong. Like that's a big part of it and can hit the scoreboard. A very nice little mix of what he can do as that mid forward or high forward probably. Yeah,
he was a player that I took I had 2 first round draft picks in my dynasty league this year, so I took him with my second first rounder, which was like pick 11 or something like that. Pick 8 or 9 or something like that. So, but copped a bit of flack at the time because you're picking. There's better guys in the pool, especially like there's a few like rookies in there as well that you could have like jumped on as well that might be better in the future. But again, I'm playing him at F5 at the moment, and more than happy with his output from his first 3 games this season. Albeit a quiet one last week, but he's exactly what I wanted in for a contending team to plug in and play, just like you said. So you got to be happy with that. James Worpel, moving on to the Hawks, is a player I think is in for a big few weeks. I think there's a pretty nice run coming up from him from memory. Scored 104 points. And I said last week, he's the one I think benefits from Will Day being out of the side the most. Looks like Nash is going to be out now as well.
Probably cops 2 or 3, I reckon, for that, surely.
Yeah, so I think he's just going to see a huge uptick. Him and Newcomb are going to have to be the main guys in there, and I can see them probably having a decent run over the next few weeks. So, yeah, if he's available on waivers, he's one you should be looking at. Probably picked up in most leagues by now, but because he had that stint out, he might be available still. Jack Scrimshaw is another one. I like him when Sicily plays forward, because he kind of... Now they've got Barras, now they've got Battle. He doesn't have to play those key roles anymore. And so he kind of does... And this was my pick preseason. He kind of does play that Sicily role if Sicily goes forward, and he seems to be scoring a little bit, better when that happens. So, I think he gets on the switch a little bit. I think it's 7 marks this week, and most of them were just kind of being the outlet kick and stuff like that. There were a few intercepts in there, so it's kind of a watch on Sicily. The only thing I will flag is I think Cole Shadir comes back this week, so maybe Sicily doesn't go forward as much. I think Lewis is probably 6 or 7 weeks away. I think it is, but. And it kind of leads into the Gunston Mabior Chol talk as well, because they both scored, I think it was 96 and 88 points respectively, 3 goals apiece. Are they even the best 2 key forward options if everyone's fit as well? What do you think?
Probably not, and that's even what a lot of Hawthorn supporters sort of say. You're not saying if that was their grand final makeup, you're probably not going in with a heap of confidence with what they could do. But they've been serviceable, and I think that's what it's all about. System. It's all about whatever the soldier in for another one or whatever.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
what is sort of working for those guys at the moment, and I think that's where Sam Mitchell, to his credit, is making that work for him.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess the whole point of that is like there's a kind of bit of a carousel in roles going on depending on needs at Hawthorn at the moment, and it's probably not as settled. You probably need to wait for a few of these key forwards to come back in, Culture Deer, and in a few more weeks, Mitch Lewis, before we really get a picture of how their best kind of 22 looks and where players play in these roles. So Scrimshaw might be good for a few weeks stretch while Sicily's playing forward and rotating between the two, but I'm not sure if it's something we can rely on long term. Anyways, we'll punch through the listener questions and I'll let you get on with your day, Warnie. At Observer AFL wants to know, buy low, or let's say he's got a list of players here. He wants to know if we should buy low or are they cooked? And you can just do a yes or no, I think, if you want. So Dane Zorko, buy low or is he cooked?
I'm not going to say that he's cooked, but I don't think I'd be spending any coin on him.
Yeah, only if you could somehow, like, if you need a last-ditch defender and you could give up like say I've got like a Leo Lombard on my on my list who's injured and not going to be helping me out, and I could trade him for that, for someone who's rebuilding or whatever, might help. Laird, is he a buy low?
He is, if you're contending this year, I think.
Luke Ryan, buy low?
Yeah, I think so. As much as there's going to be games where he's going to be, a D1 for you. So I think you can call that a yes, I'd buy low there.
What about Tom Stewart? I'm deeply concerned over Tom Stewart, just given the outs or the injury history, the illnesses. Is he a buy low or are you staying clear?
Comes with risk, comes with a headache, but I'd steer clear.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing at the moment. What about Jack Steele? I'm interested in this one. Buy low?
Yeah, buy low. I think that he's going to come good. He's obviously got plenty of time ahead of him as well. That's a thing. But you just have to ride guys like that at the moment, don't you? And hope that the Saints get a little bit better too, because that's even a part of it.
Yeah, I think the knee. There's obviously something going on that kept him out for a couple of weeks, and it's kind of
we've seen that over the last couple of years too. That's like one of the concerns. But I think we all know how good he can be.
Is Paddy Cripps a buy low?
Whoa. I'd just avoid, I think, Cripper for me.
Yeah.
I love him, but he's just not someone that I love for fantasy.
Carlton midfielders are probably just too up and down at the moment. What about Matt Crouch, buying low or letting him go?
I'll let him go.
Yeah, same. I'm thinking that. Rowan Marshall, buy low?
I think you'd have to if you can.
Yeah, 100%.
That's the thing, and I don't think there'd be many owners that wouldn't want to hold that, but if you could get him low, go for it. What
about Kieran Briggs? He's next one on the list.
Yeah, I think as well. He's got a lot of years ahead of him, hopefully being a 95 guy. We'll take that as a blip. Let's call it the wind or whatever it was over there in Adelaide on the weekend. But, that was pretty putrid and you'd be pretty devastated. But I think you'd have to, sit back on a Tuesday as it is now, take a deep breath and go, yep, you'll be all right.
I feel like Rob has been quite restrictive this season. There's been a few things, like I guess Cherry, when he played him, was like, because I went to that game, felt like he couldn't even get a touch, but he was kind of playing with an injury as well. So there's been a few circumstances. So maybe that's the matchup was a factor. What about Dylan Moore? He's probably someone that you're looking at in your classic teams, dropping in price and stuff like that. It's been a consistent performer. You buying low there?
Yeah, I think he can, but don't go in thinking that he's going to be a real consistent scorer because of the consistency of role. That's going to be the big thing for him.
Definitely. There's been a few questions about him this week, so we might skip over them. Major Van Bam wants to know, who are you picking up to replace Darcy? He's got 3 options here, Gunston, Garcia or Hewitt. Who would you be taking out of those?
Probably Hewitt. I think it'd have to be for that future, I guess, there. Love Garcia because I feel like he's got a pretty high floor as well with what he does.
Yeah.
So he tackles. He seems to be part of that mix as well, and they're liking him.
Yeah, I like Garcia for the time being just because he's got a pretty decent role in that midfield. It's just that, like, Philippou, I think's not far away and stuff like that. So, I'd still probably take him over the other two just because I think Hewitt's a bit raw. Yeah. Gunston, I'm not even sure if he is best 22 when everyone's fit. Like, he wasn't in the side early, and he might be in a bit of trouble.
Sub-risk as well.
That sort of stuff. Strand Gut 4 wants to know, any point in holding Jinby? My team's mostly Melbourne players plus 10 imports, and he's one. Powell, Long, Chapman, or Closey brothers or Rouston are on the waivers. What do you think of Jinby? Like, for me, they're not he needs to be an inside midfielder. Like, I just do not see the point in playing him in defence. Like, what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, as a defender, you wouldn't be all that happy as a team having him there. That's the thing. Like, he's not going to be helping the Eagles that much in that role either. He's solid, but he's not going to be sort of a game changer. And yeah, is he going to be that midfielder though? That's the other question as well. Like, he's a pretty big, solid unit. But yeah, it's interesting. Sort of maybe the Powell type player might be a safer. Is
that one. A Will or a Tom? I don't really know. That's the issue with that one.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's a Ned Long. Like, if it is, I don't mind that.
It'd be all in on Ned Long, I think.
Yeah, so
Jimby's just got that nice defender status at the moment, I guess, which is the handy thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It depends like where you're at, but yeah, I'm not loving it at the role he's playing at the moment. At Luco1's asking, how will Kadeem Coleman score when he returns, and will he impact the other Brisbane players like Fletcher, Berry, probably Zorko as well, if you throw into that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we have to cool our jets. I'm thinking, because he did this in the grand final 2 years ago or whatever, and what he might be able to do. It's going to be a bit of a slow build for whatever he does there, but it is going to have an effect with whatever they do, because I think that's his position and his role that he'd need to play in defence, but he's going to be massively eased in, so I wouldn't stress on it too much with what that means. But if you've, like a Berry, for example, he could be a sell-high type guy at the moment with what he's doing. Fletcher you want to keep because he's got the chops. He's a good one. But yeah, Zorko could be one that they do need to think about the future. Yes, they're contending, and hopefully for the Lions' sake that they win the flag this year with what they're doing, playing their current system. But 2 years' time, we're not talking about Zorko there, are we? And it's going to be all about Kitty Coleman doing his thing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because if you look at their wings as well, like, so if you bring Kadeem Coleman in, he doesn't play anywhere but halfback. Zorko's pretty much the same, or is he the guy that they move to a different role as well, like back forward, back in the midfield? Like, is that, and then it's just very hard, because like Fletcher and Berry are like decent wingmen, and they've been kind of swapping at halfback and been scoring well there. Then what does that flow-on effect have on someone like Levi Ashcroft, who's spending a lot of time wing forward? Does he go forward more? Like, it's they're just stacked with riches.
They are,
like it's interesting.
Anyone that writes them off after that loss, I think, to Collingwood are doing themselves a disservice, I think, because they can win it this year again.
100%. Yeah, and then it's just too hard to predict what they're actually going to be. But they're all considerations you have to make when you're trying to bring players like that in, or think about what to do in the waivers and stuff like that. At Itchimy wants to know, what do you do with Rowan Marshall? What can you do? You just wait it out, don't you?
Wait it out, and he's still got plenty of time being, hopefully a top couple ruck for the rest of his careers. But I think you've got to ride it out, and hopefully he gets himself right as well, because clearly that pre-season injury, whatever that was, that stress fracture of the hip or pelvis or whatever that was, that has affected him with a bit of his mobility, and I think what he's doing around the ground. So I'd be you got to just ride it out. That's however you've got him. Like, you've gone through something to get him and have him and loved him over the last couple, but now you just got to stick it out.
Yep, I agree. Like, there's no point trading premiums like that, and there's not there's
no rucks that I think that are coming through at the moment that can hit those sort of heights that we've seen as well.
Yeah, just even I look at my waiver pool, or like the unowned players for these ad drops and mid-season drafts I've got coming up. Like, there's just no players in the pool that are even playing either. Like, they're very hard to come across. And if you've got some guy like this who's just playing probably sore and, had a restricted preseason or whatever, like, you just have to cop this and do your best with what you can in it, and just kind of wait for him to come good. Anyways, Warnie, thanks heaps for joining us on the show. Anything you want to plug, or just head to DT Talk and listen to the traders?
Everything's all there, and we'll keep ploughing through. We're a quarter of the way through the season now, which felt like it's been longer than that. But anyway, we will be smashing it out for the rest of the year. Looking forward to it as we, hopefully build better teams in both Classic and Draft, and hopefully my keeper league that is sitting 3-3 at the moment can actually get some players on the park. Some of those forwards would be handy, and to give me more than 50s would be great.
Well, hopefully things start to tip in your favour a bit more, and you can get that positive win-loss record and jump up the ladder. Get around our stuff at Keep League Pod on all the socials. Keep helping us grow the YouTube channel, trying to get that pumping at the moment. Thanks heaps for playing Footy Heads. Head to footyheads.com if you haven't had a go at that yet. And if you'd like to support the podcast, please sign up in as a member. Links to all of that stuff in the description below. Thanks for listening for another week, and we'll talk to you soon. See you later.